Pleasure.
In the studio by Therese Coffey, Secretary of State for the Environment. Therese, thank you for making your way here to speak to me in person. It's lovely to see you. Look, we're going to grasp the nettle because I'm going to ask you about your colleague Suella Braverman and her speeding situation. Now, have you ever had to do a speed awareness course or ever been done for speeding? I have.
I got 3 points in 2005.
Fair enough.
And nothing
OK.
since then.
In a 30? In a 70? Do you remember?
I think it was in a 30.
OK. So Suella's been given these points. It was when she was Attorney General before she became Home Secretary. She then tries to sort out a sort of cosy arrangement whereby she can have a one-on-one speed awareness course. There's something not quite right about all this. It's a bit dodgy, isn't it?
Well, I think it's perfectly standard practice now that when people speed, they often get offered, if they're not speeding too much over the limit, the opportunities to do a course. Clearly...
With a group of people.
Rather than me kind of get into stuff I don't know about, I've only read the papers like everybody else and don't have any more information than that. But I think what's fair to say is that she took the points, she regrets it, and those points and of course paying the fine is now a done deal. But should she have
asked for special arrangements? I mean, why can't she just attend a speed awareness course with the rest of the general public? I mean, that's what everybody has to do every day of the week, seemingly. We're all done for speeding at different times in our driving career. Why is she wanting special privileges? It suggests that, once again, we've got cabinet ministers and MPs totally out of touch with the public.
Well, I don't know the specific details.
The specifics are that she's asked for a one-on-one speed awareness course when anyone ordinary who gets done for speeding is offered a course at a hotel on an A road with a group of other people and you have to sit through it for 4 hours. Why on earth, just because she's an MP or indeed Attorney General, should she get special privileges?
Well, I don't know the reasons of why she went about that. What I do know
for her own
is that
privacy, because she doesn't want to be in a course with other people.
Well, what I do know is that after whatever reflection, she took the points and paid the penalty. I mean, there are other people in public life who have ended up getting fined or even banned from driving, from speeding. I'm not that people shouldn't be speeding in the first place, but instead of speculating about what I don't know, that's what I do.
Would you have taken this action? Would you have asked for special arrangements to be made if you had to do a speed awareness course?
Well, I think the best thing to do is prevention's better than cure and avoid speeding in the first place.
Say if you've got a speed awareness course that you might have to do, will you just do it, Therese, or will you ask for special privileges?
Camilla, I'm not... I try to avoid speeding in the first place, so to try and avoid these sorts of situations.
All right, let's move on to your environment brief. I can't have been alone in being slightly incensed this week with the news that it's great that the water company is going to sort out the sewerage that has been pumped into our rivers for far too long, but actually that customers are going to end up paying for it. We've got the Observer reporting that they're going to make 15 billion in profits, and yet at the same time we're going to have 400 to 500 quid added to our bills because of what water companies have done to pollute rivers. Why in God's name isn't the government saying to the water companies, no, you're not charging the general public, you should cover the cost of this?
Well, there's been record amounts of investment into our sewer network, in particular in the last 25 years since privatisation. That's what that unlocked, as well as what's supposed to be a more efficient way of doing these sorts of projects. We'd set out last year a storm overflow reduction plan of up to nearly £60 billion is going to be the cost. And I want to make crystal clear is that people aren't going to be paying for the penalties or the fines. That has to come from the companies themselves. But we have seen the way of getting that investment into modernising our infrastructure. For example, not far from here, we've got the Thames Tideway Super Sewer. That's a multi-billion-pound project, which is taking about a decade and is being paid for through bills over that length of time, but that will eradicate the need for overflows themselves.
But you can understand the frustration of people who are really hard pushed at the moment financially to being charged more for what are water companies' mistakes when it comes to sewage. Fergal Sharkey wrote a piece in the Mail. You know he's been a vocal campaigner on behalf of cleaner rivers. And he's saying this is ludicrous for the government to allow water companies to put the burden onto people already facing sky-high taxes, particularly a Conservative government. Why are you advocating more money being taken out of our pockets for this? It's not our fault. We haven't been responsible for this.
What I'm saying to you is that the fines and the penalties will not be coming from
So why is this extra money being added to our bills? Water companies have said this, expect to pay more. We're expecting to pay more even though we can't swim in our rivers safely.
Well, actually, Camilla, of our over 400 designated bathing water sites, the quality of that has gone up since 2010.
Do you swim in
2010,
rivers?
it was about 70% were deemed good or excellent. Now it's 93%.
Do you swim in rivers?
I am happy to swim in rivers. I'm not the strongest of swimmers, so there's an element there of safety as well. But I think it's important to recognise there has actually been significant investment in cleaning up our rivers. Of course, there's more to go. I'm fed up of the storm overflows. It feels like being used excessively. It happens more frequently in Wales than it does in England. But there is a criminal investigation already underway by the Environment Agency, specifically into this topic. But overall, we need to reflect that the time that Labour was in government, £31 billion was paid out in dividends. We haven't seen that level of dividends being paid out.
So should we just expect our water bills to go up? I mean, is that because we know they're also trying to foist water meters on us, which are economic if you're just living in a 1 or 2 bedroom home, but not as good value for money if you've got 3 kids. So they're trying to get money out of us that way. Do we just accept that water bills just go up now? Well, like everything else? Through
our plan for water, we want to set about not only how we clean up our rivers and seas, but also about our future supply. In terms of more broadly, we do want to encourage people to use perhaps less water on a daily basis than perhaps they realise that they are doing. That's the benefit of meters, and people can switch to meters without having to switch to a meter price, if that makes sense, so that people are conscious there. But I get the frustration that people have. I'm fed up with the water companies. That's why, since coming into office, I've basically set out that I want an action plan for every single storm overflow on my desk by the end of next month. What was announced next week is a similar amount of investment that we were expecting to come as we get through this transition of a largely Victorian network where sewage and rainwater get combined together.
You've known it's Victorian for some years and you've been in power for 13. So why is this only being resolved now?
Well, the key thing which we have done uniquely, particularly in this country, is to actually get the monitoring going. The only reason why people are aware of all the sewage scandal that is around, the scourge of sewage, is because it was about a decade ago, a Conservative minister told the water companies they have to start monitoring and publishing that. Now, by the end of this year, we'll have all of the storm overflows in that case. But we didn't have that before, and you don't get that level of transparency pretty much anywhere else in the world. But it's through having that monitoring, having that publication, that we realised there was a particular problem. It's given the evidence to give the Environment Agency confidence to launch the criminal investigation. That's still ongoing. But I can assure you we're here on the side of consumers and we want to make sure that water companies are doing their job.
Another consumer story, because obviously DEFRA is environment, food and rural affairs. Let's talk about food. Food inflation as high as 19%. It's much higher than inflation. I was using the example earlier. You might have noticed it yourself in the supermarket. A packet of Haribos that I'd buy for the children would have been £1 and now it's £1.25. So that's not even 19%, it's 25%. Have supermarkets been taking customers for a ride here? Is there also an idea of an environment of greedflation going on?
I'm very conscious of the cost of living challenge more broadly within the country, and food inflation in particular traditionally will take a bit more time to come down.
Do you think the supermarkets have pushed prices up just because they can?
Well, I think actually we have a very competitive supermarket pricing that we see, and clearly costs of input have gone up, including cost of labour as well. And a lot of that cost of input is due to the illegal invasion of Ukraine.
But why is your colleague, Tory colleague Robert Goodwill, leading an investigation to greedflation if it doesn't think that supermarkets might be taking customers for a ride?
Well, the Select Committee, it's open to them to decide on that, on what inquiries they face into. We have, through our Farm to Fork Summit, we brought people together last week. We announced some more supply chain reviews, because what we want to make sure is there is fairness in supply chain, fair for farmers, fair for consumers to have good, affordable, high-quality food, and to make sure that every part of the supply chain is participating in that. It is challenging. That's why over the last couple of years, the government has paid £95 billion towards helping people in the country with the cost of living. There's an ongoing focus, particularly for people on the lowest income. But then people will say it's counteracted by the fact that we've never been taxed more. So you're taking more out of our pockets and you're a Tory government. It doesn't seem to make sense to people. You're charging businesses more. You've shaved
another 5% off their already fragile profit margins post-pandemic, and then the British public are being dragged into tax thresholds way beyond what they ever expected. You've got millions more in the 40% band. You're taxing people until the pip squeaks. So you're saying you're giving with one hand, but you're taking away with another.
What we have seen over the last decade is that the richest 1% of the country are now paying a far higher proportion of income tax than ever before.
But
it's
you
about
must
30%.
be concerned about middle earners being dragged into that top rate of tax. That was never the intention when that top rate was set.
Well, indeed, and that's why we had increased the threshold.
Talking about teachers,
to
talking about doctors,
£50,000.
talking about nurses, we're talking about people who shouldn't be regarded as high-income earners in many situations.
Well, we have seen salaries. Sorry, we have seen salaries, particularly in public sector, rise.
Not enough, though.
Not at the moment in pace with inflation. I accept that. But what I will say is that we have been putting money back into people's pockets, particularly when the economy was affected.
That, Therese. I mean, you can talk about furlough cash, but people feel like the government is taking a lot of money out of their wages. Should tax come down in the autumn statement? Yes or no? Please give me a yes or no answer.
In terms of, as you
opinion.
know, the Chancellor has set out already the trajectory of what we're doing.
Just
you're
a Tory. Just yes or no, should it come down? Should tax come down?
You know that the Conservative Party, the Conservative government, its intention is to lower taxes.
So is that a yes?
The intention is
to
lower taxes, but first of all...
I've got to get a straight answer to this question. Every time a minister comes on, I can't get a straight answer. Should taxes come down in autumn?
The 5 priorities are halve inflation, reduce debt, grow the economy.
Yes or no, Therese, please?
The philosophy of the Conservative Party is to bring lower taxes.
Is
but
that a
I'm
yes?
not the Chancellor, Camilla.
I know, but would you like to see them come down?
As you know, Camilla,
Yes.
the Chancellor will be the person who sets out what we do with tax rates.
OK. I'm going to put one question to you, because I know you might mention, because I know you've got your wine policy that you're announcing this morning. Stephen Glover's asked in the Mail, name one major thing, Brexit apart, that the Tories have achieved in 13 years. Can you name one?
We've seen a huge increase in the standards of education for our children. So in terms of global productivity, we've seen
but teachers
much better
on strike,
much better
good
in
reading
terms of,
results.
Reading, exactly,
Yep.
and that's absolutely critical. We've seen that slide.
Is that enough, though, after more than a decade in power?
We've seen a massive shift in what we're doing about tackling aspects of climate change, which has an impact on people's lives.
And their energy bills.
Well, it hasn't, and that's why we're also starting to see the first nuclear power.
We've seen a huge increase in migration. Figures coming out could be close to 1 million. David Cameron promised they'd be capped at 100,000 when he was in office.
Well, the key thing about having left the European Union is that we can now be in charge of the rules. And that is what we did by introducing...
we haven't taken back control of borders. If we've got nearly 1 million legal migrants coming into this country and we've got 45,000 arriving illegally by boat, that's not control, that's chaos.
Camilla, I'm not going to speculate on future figures. What we do know is that we have seen a significant number of people come from Ukraine and from Hong Kong.
But a lot of these migrant numbers are from visas being issued to students and therefore their dependents. They're not even working visas.
Right. So one of the things is that we have, I think, 4 of the top 10 universities in the world. Our level of education is really fantastic and other people want to take advantage of that. It's important that we do support our universities, but the key thing is that we have say on the rules and it's up to us to how we decide to change that. We've also brought investors in. There is different ways of making sure that we do that. But one of the key rules is that we can take charge of is some of the regulations.
So if we take charge, if we're going to take charge, then should the numbers come down? Prime Minister's indicated yes. Would you agree with him?
The Prime Minister has, and it's always, again, been our intention. We are in charge of the rules. Should they come down? We can make those changes that we believe we need to make. But in terms of regulations, on the wine element, which I'm talking about today as well, is we're taking an opportunity where there are about 400 pages of regulations handling wine. It's becoming a thriving industry in this country.
English sparkling wine particularly. Right?
Indeed. And one of the things that we're doing is simplifying all of that, getting rid of some of the unnecessary bureaucracy, which we believe could save up to 50p off a bottle of fizz. So that's good news for consumers. But a lot of this is really about deregulating and making sure that we still have good quality products that people can enjoy in this country.
I know you've got a really busy broadcast round, so I'm going to let you go. Thank you very much for coming in today, Therese. Nice to see you.